Hello. Being an independent filmmaker is more than just writing, directing, or producing. It's actually about learning a whole suite of skills, many of which you don't even think about when you first get started. I want to welcome you to day 4 of my 30 in 30 video series. That's 30 videos in 30 days. And today I'm going to break down the 5 essential skills that every independent filmmaker needs, explaining why they're critical, and give you practical ways to improve on each one. So independent filmmakers wear many hats. To get a project off the ground, you need more than just creative talent. You need to manage resources, lead people, and be able to connect with your audience. And if you don't develop these skills, your project is either going to stall or fail to reach its potential. But if you take the time to learn and apply them while you're developing your film, they will make your filmmaking journey smoother and way more rewarding. And as I work on The Quiet Canadians and reflect on what we learned making 13 Miles, I realized that success as an independent filmmaker comes down to a combination of creative, business, and interpersonal skills. And the more that you master these, the smoother your journey will become. So let's talk about the 5 skills I think you need to learn. Number 1, creative problem solving. And why is this important? Filmmaking is problem solving on a deadline. From budget issues to logistical hurdles, challenges will come up, and how you handle them defines your success. And some common misconceptions that we have when we're talking about problem solving is that if you just plan everything perfectly, nothing will go wrong. And that creative decisions don't involve problem solving, it's just about the art. And that can't be further from the truth. You have to look at your film project as it's almost like a construction project in a way, where you have a plan going in and you have an idea of what you want, but in the end that plan runs up against the logistics of human beings, resources, weather, and so on. And frequent mistakes that filmmakers make is panicking or freezing when unexpected issues arise and not realizing that unexpected issues are part of the process. Another frequent mistake is rushing to fix a problem without considering creative alternatives. Nothing can derail your film project more than making rash decisions because you need a solution right away. It's really important to learn how to understand that adaptability is going to be part of the process. So almost always, if you can, think about each shooting day and each production logistical challenges. What's my plan A, what's my plan B, and what's my plan C? Plan C has to be a process where you can get what you desire with compromised resources. So here's a practical tip. When you hit a roadblock, ask yourself, what is the opportunity here? For example, if a location falls through, can you rewrite the scene to work somewhere that's even more interesting and that you have access to? And especially if you think to yourself, this is actually something that I'm going to do for every single scene or every single location, you actually treat the constraints that you have as a creative challenge, and you actually are ready for it. So you have your sort of ideal situation, and then you have your plan B and your plan C, and your plan C becomes something where you're like, okay, my plan C is still a really good option. It's just a cheaper or easier option. And what this does is it allows you to not compromise on plan A. It allows you to say, okay, well, if everything goes according to plan, I will do plan A. If it does not go according to plan, I still have plan B and C, and plan C is still a scene or a sequence or a moment or a part of the film that I need in order to tell the story. Your second skill is going to be communication, and I think I am probably going to harp on this more than you is probably comfortable, but I think learning to communicate effectively is one of the key skills that you can have as a director, as a producer. So why is communication important? Your ability to share your vision and align your team determines whether or not your project succeeds. And that's bottom line. You cannot do everything. And you can't sit there and dictate to your costume designer or to your production designer or your cinematographer or any of the people working on your team how to do their jobs. They're experts in what they do, and they have abilities that you don't have. Otherwise, you wouldn't hire them in the first place. You would just do it yourself. Making films is collaborative in that you need a leader at the top who has a vision and has to be able to communicate that vision down the line. You can't blame your crew for not interpreting your vision properly. That ultimately falls on you. So some common misconceptions. Everybody should just understand my vision. Well, that's not true. Whenever you send a script out, whenever you even show people a mood board or something like that, they will always interpret it through their own lens. And it's up to you to figure out what their interpretation of it is, and to talk with them and communicate with them and collaborate with them to make sure that what they're seeing aligns with what you're looking for. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're sitting there saying to them, no, I always saw this jacket from this manufacturer as the costume for this person. It's being open to the options that they bring to the table, and then choosing the one that best aligns with the vision that you had right from the get-go, and being able to explain why that's important. Now, does that mean that you can't have happy accidents? Absolutely. But happy accidents occur when you already know exactly what you need in terms of your vision. Your vision for the film has to align with those happy accidents. So, something appears in the screen that wasn't intended. And if you can look at it and go, you know what, that's okay, because in my vision for the film, this is the point of the scene, and that actually might help us tell that story a little bit better. And you can always go back and say, well, I actually didn't have an intention there. That was a happy accident that occurred on the day. But in the end, when you put the story together, all your happy accidents have to align with what your expectations are for telling the story of the movie. Another common misconception is that clear communication only matters during production, and I think that's the furthest from the truth. The more you're communicating in pre-production, the more you can solve problems before they occur on set. Worst things that can happen is that items show up that were not intended, and you can only pick between 2 or 3 options that have been given to you, and you have to pick within 5 minutes. If you can have these discussions with your team in pre-production and get your assistant director to schedule them, and that's something that I have found lots of directors try to skip out on. They think to themselves, well, they'll just understand what I need, and I'll trust them to bring the right option to set. Well, that's fine. If you trust them to bring the right option to set without having that discussion, though, then you can't be you have to live with what their option was, because you've given them only enough direction to go by. Whereas if you can have that meeting ahead of time and say, okay, show me what you came up with, and take a look and go, okay, I like this, but can we refine this a little bit more? Can we, I like the color you've gotten with that, or I like the direction you're going here, but what I would like to see is this, and basically bring your teams along so that everything aligns better. Give them the rope to come up with something that's better than you could have envisioned. And I have found that when you are open to those discussions and you plan for those discussions, you will achieve something far greater than what you anticipated. And this goes the same for actors as well. You're hiring your actors because you believe that they can play the role. So you let them go and you let them come up with their vision for the character that they're about to play. And then you refine it so that you make sure that it's still telling the story that you want to tell, because as the director, that's your domain. Your domain as a director is to be in charge of the story. So some frequent mistakes people make is assuming that people know what you mean without clarifying, and overloading team members with unnecessary information. So give them direction, send them away, make adjustments, and so on, until you've refined it to the point where the day that you show up on set, you know what you've got the right answer, or you've got at least a couple of options that you can now test in real life. So you're as a director, you are assigning responsibility for a thing to be built or a thing to happen. You know who's coming up with it. You know who you need to talk to about it, and now you've got a clear line of communication that is usually run through the assistant director, if at all possible, that will help avoid any kind of confusion down the line. And this also starts in the script. If in the script it says red velvet chair, that's what your production designer is going to look for, is a red velvet chair. If you really don't care if it's a red velvet chair, as an example, then you either need to change the script or you need to have a meeting right away. Because if you just say, oh, it doesn't have to be a red velvet chair, your production designer is going to look for something that at least is in the vision of the script. With no other direction, your production designer is going to focus on what is written in the text of the script as being their North Star. And if you say that doesn't matter, well, then you should remove that description in the script. You should just say there's a chair, or there's a, and then if you need any clarification, you go from there. Don't assume that your production designer knows what's going on in your head, because if you say, oh, it's a chair, and you get a chair, well, can be a myriad of things. I've worked on a show once where it was scripted as a mansion, for example. Like, the location was a mansion. It was listed as a mansion. So what did we do? Well, we were all out looking for mansions. And then the director and the producer and the writer were like, oh, no, it doesn't have to be a mansion. It can be just a luxury home. And you think to yourself, okay, but then it should have been written as a luxury home, or that's where the clarification should have come in, because we've sent everybody off in one direction and now we're clarifying it to be a luxury home. This is where having some photo references and so on can be really helpful. So as a director, get your photo references. These are more important than you can believe. Like mood boards and so on are not just for vision statements. They're clarifying materials that help guide the rest of your team. All right, so number 3, financial savvy. And why is this important? Your project will live or die by its budget and by its cash flow. And whether you like it or not, understanding the numbers helps you stay on track and make smarter decisions. You need to understand how money is spent on a film set and how money is spent to make a movie. Some common misconceptions are that you can just rely on your producer to handle the money. And if you spend less, the film will automatically succeed. So in other words, if we just save money, then there's going to be more at the end. In other words, you're saying to yourself, if I just save money, then the film has a greater chance of being successful because we'll make more money when we sell it. The reverse can also be untrue. It can also be a misconception, is that more money equals a better movie. That isn't always the case. It's where money is spent productively that matters. And I think directors kind of can fall into this, and I've done this too, is where we fall into that trap of, well, we want every scene to be, as good as it can be. But you don't realize that oftentimes many of the scenes that you are shooting are what I call bridge scenes. We write them into the script and we plan for them because story-wise we think we need them in order to help make the story work for the audience. When we don't realize that in the end that might not actually be you might be cutting that later because it's not essential to moving the storyline. That doesn't mean you don't film it. It means that you might want to look at those scenes as the kind of scenes that you can film, that you want to spend as little money as possible putting together. You still might need them because you might need them to help in your head bridge the gaps, but it also can help determine what you might have to reshoot later. By shooting it and going, okay, we've got this in the can to help transition us, but now we're realizing we've become redundant in our explanation of what is needed to convey the plot, the story, and the character, and now we don't need it anymore. But it's important, it might still be important to film it. Well, some frequent mistakes that people make if they don't understand if they're not financially savvy, they underestimate the costs of what something is going to cost, and we overpromise to producers. In other words, we sort of pick numbers out of the air and say, oh, I can do this for $1 million, or I can do this for $200,000, without actually understanding how you can do it for $200,000. So I often say that it's really just an important thing to know how and where money gets spent on a film set. And another frequent mistake is ignoring cash flow, overloading and overspending too soon and running out of funds mid-project. Even though the money exists there, it's important to take a look and be constantly looking forward and projecting forward of, if we keep on this pace, will we still have money at the end to finish the film? We tend to think in the first week of making a movie that we're making Lawrence of Arabia in the first week, and by the end of the film shoot, we're basically making a documentary because the money has started to go away. Not being able to film those last 3 days the way that they need to be filmed in order to make a good story can hurt your film more than the advantages of spending and of spending more money up front in order to make the first week really sizzle. Think of your production as a full 60 minutes, if you want to think about it from a sports standpoint, is that you have to work hard for all 60 minutes and you have to have enough in the tank to finish strong. All right, so practical tip, break your budget into phases, pre-production, production, post-production, allocate contingency funds for unexpected costs and track every expense. Try to figure out in your head how much each day of filming is going to cost. Try to figure out variable elements that cost more money, things like extras, things like extra crew needed to do a particular event, what stunts cost, what special effects cost. Try to learn the macro of how much these things affect your film so that you can better allocate where they go and what the best use of those resources are. And this can be just something as simple as just learning, studying the budget. Make that part of your pre-production and your development, is to study the budget, take a look at where the big items of expenses are, and think to yourself, okay, so that's necessary in order for me to tell my story, and learn why. And don't be afraid to ask questions, because your accounting team or your co-producer may have the answers that you don't have, but that doesn't excuse you from not understanding how it works. Fourth skill is building and learning how to build and lead teams. This kind of falls back to communication as well. And why this is important is that filmmaking is a team effort, and your ability to inspire and manage your team directly will impact the quality of the final product. Common misconceptions in this regard are, if I just hire talented people, they'll figure it out on their own. And leadership is about giving orders and being in control. And these are frequent mistakes that a director will make. How you can combat these is, yes, hire the best people you can get, hire the best people you can afford, but make sure that you are in communication with them, as I've said before. And instead of giving orders, what you want to be doing is you want to be leading people towards the vision that you have, and then letting them create the solutions. So if I say I want a car chase, and then turning that over to my stunts, my special effects, and my picture car people to figure out a plan to get from the beginning of the story of the car chase to the end of the story of the car chase, and then present that to me, and then we can work through the elements that need to be there in order for it to work. For example, if I was planning a car chase through Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, I'd have to turn that over, because I might not be able to figure out those logistics, but I do know what I need it to do is I need it to end, the car chase to end at a specific location, and to end in a specific way, end with someone, a character dying or a character being captured or something like that. Okay, well, that's the goal. The goal is that the character has to be captured by the end, and it has to be exciting. So let's talk about how we do both of those things. How do we execute that? How do we have the audience on the edge of their seat for a car chase that ends with our main character being captured? That's the vision. That's the goal. Now let's take that to our team, and let's figure out the objectives for that. Let's figure out how does our team execute, because it's going to not just be one particular person. It's going to be picture cars. It's going to be special effects. It's going to be locations. It's going to be stunts. All of these departments are going to have to work with us. It's going to be costumes. It's going to be everything. How are we going to execute this particular skill, or this particular gag, if you will? And that's something that you're going to talk about as a team. Let's have a meeting. Let's have a car chase meeting. Let's have a stunt meeting. Let's have something related to that skill. The practical tip I have for you here is to set clear goals, empower your team to contribute ideas. Regularly check in with key departments, not to micromanage, but to ensure alignment and resolving of small issues before they grow. Set clear goals and empower your team to contribute ideas. Fifth skill to learn is marketing and audience engagement. Why is this important? No matter how good your film is, it needs an audience to succeed. Marketing is not just about selling tickets, it's about creating relationships, building trust with your audience, developing partnerships with distributors, developing partnerships with theaters, and developing relationships with streaming services. Some common misconceptions, of course, here are, if the film is good enough, people will find it, and that it cannot be further from the truth. In this day and age, you have to do a lot more than just put it out there and expect that people are going to find your film somehow. Another common misconception is that marketing starts when the film is finished, and that's also a fallacy. The film, you have to be working on getting the word about the film out from the beginning. Doesn't mean you have to have all this production value and all these photos and so on, but you do need to be talking about your film as early as possible. Some frequent mistakes that people make in this regard is that we ignore the audience engagement until post-production, and focusing only on social media instead of building a long-term strategy. Social media is fun, but it can get quite overwhelming, and it is not the only way to build an audience for your film. It is important, but it should not be something that you're spending hours and hours and hours on every single day. So a practical tip here is to start building your audience early. Share your process on platforms where your target audience hangs out. Learn where your target audience hangs out. This could be Reddit. It could be Instagram. And what communities related to your niche are out there. Find out where they are. Get on those places. Listen to the conversations that are happening there. And build organic and natural relationships with people who could potentially be fans, investors, and other stakeholders in your film. Run newsletters. I really encourage people to start a newsletter for your film and your production company, and engage directly with potential fans. People who follow your journey will be the first to support your film. So the earlier you can bring people along, the greater chance you have of building not just fans of your film, but ambassadors of your film. All right, so in conclusion, let's summarize these lessons. Being an independent filmmaker isn't just about creativity, it's about developing the skills that keep your project moving forward. So here's a quick recap. Learn to solve problems creatively. Constraints can spark innovation. Communicate clearly. Your team's alignment will depend on it. Understand your finances. It's not just about cutting costs, but learning how to spend wisely. Lead with purpose. Create an environment where people thrive. Engage your audience early. Marketing is about relationships, not just promotion. In fact, it's not really even about promotion at all. Marketing is about relationships. It's about bringing people along. As Seth Godin says, it's about creating an environment and a community where people like us enjoy and do things like this. So you want to be a part of the community of your film, not just someone who is promoting to the community of your film. These skills are not innate. They are learned through action. Every project is an opportunity to build and refine them. And that's what we're doing with The Quiet Canadians. That's what we did with 13 Miles. That's what we use every project we're involved in to learn and develop these skills. All right, which of these skills are you going to work on right now? Drop a comment. I'd love to hear what you're learning. If you found this helpful, feel free to hit subscribe for more videos on filmmaking and on how to build a sustainable career. And if you want to support my work, check on the links below. Join one of my newsletters, or just buy me a coffee. And your support will help keep these lessons coming. And I will see you tomorrow for day 5.